Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Brookline Select Board for November 20th. Time is 6:31. First up, review changes to the agenda, if there are any.
Dave?
I would like to, oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Bruce, please.
After Deb speaks, Deb Wilson, I'd like to make a comment about town meeting underneath that. Just a quick minute
About,
about
so
town
you want to
meeting.
add a new business item about town meeting?
Yes.
Okay, let's add it after the town report, so let's make that C, town meeting. Because there's another new business item. So
Yeah, but I wanted to do it while Deb was here, if that was possible.
okay, all right, okay, that's fine. We
Go
can do that
first.
Okay. Anything else? I would like to add, we'll rejig the lettering of this, but another brief new business item after the town report about the solid waste management district. Just a couple of things about that. Anything else that anyone wanted to tweak about the agenda? All right, hearing none. Our scheduled members of the public are Sam Farwell and Deb Luskin from the Green Mountain Conservancy. Other scheduled members of the public are Sarah Wiswall and Mark Bills, and Guy Tanzer, of course, and Dal Mangiello, our recording clerk for the night. We have no unscheduled members of the public. Bruce is leaving us. Let's move on quickly to approving the minutes from the November 6th meeting. Once again, Peter has ignored me, so I need to be added to the list of people who are present. He's really got it in for me.
I was there though, that's nice.
Well, yeah, now he loves you and he
Yeah,
hates
yes,
me. It used to be
yeah.
the other way around. Anything else on page 1? I didn't notice anything. Any changes on page 2? The only thing I was going to suggest, and I guess I'm going to probably make the changes to these. Under new business, the first sentence where it says Mr. Mello noted that there's been a situation involving shutting off the water, I just want to clarify that that's at the meeting house. So I'll probably add that text just to say that it was in the meeting house. And then further down, we'll add Mr. Bloom had cleaned up the trees at the Susie's Little Peanuts building. Again, so there's no confusion between the two buildings. Any other changes on page 2?
Did you want to clear up what they're talking about for the Jeffers invoice for 180 for Sunny's Lynn?
Oh, yes, I
Is it just as
suppose,
the
yeah, I
building?
suppose we should, yeah. Yeah, we'll put it in the request for SLP building as well.
Yeah.
Anything else on page 2? Anything on page 3? Hearing none, anything on page 4?
No.
All right, then I would make a motion that we approve the minutes from the November 6th meeting as amended. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Gwen. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the November 6th meeting as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I won't abstain because I was actually there, despite what it says on the minutes. Okay, those are approved.
Nice.
No, just their supervisor.
All right, we will now move on to new business, and first up is a little presentation and discussion with Sam and Deb from Green Mountain Conservancy on the Deer Run Nature Reserve. The floor is yours.
Okay, and what did you schedule for us, 10 minutes? 15?
Yeah, let's call it 10 to 15.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna move quickly. And anybody who would like their own
have
copy,
that.
please? You've got one? Okay. So these notes, and then you have the description, the written description, which I don't expect you to read through now, but I have extra copies.
We have a copy of it circulating.
I'll just put these on the table.
Okay, great.
So that goes, pretty much most of what we're gonna say is probably written on those two pages. We are a nonprofit that was founded about a year ago, the Green Mountain Conservancy, and it was for the purpose of creating this this Deer Run Nature Reserve. It started around the first parcel, which is in Dummerston, right in the northwest corner, bordering Brookline and Newfane. That was owned by a family named Wilson, and a number of neighbors and abutters and other people who knew the value of the land got together and said, this really should be conserved rather than go on the open market. So we jumped on it, and we are actually just scheduled to closing today for December 2nd. So that's sort of been what we've spent the last year doing. We applied to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, which has a fund essentially for this purpose. The Nature Conservancy and Vermont Land Trust, for a lot of their projects, are funded by that same Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and they funded us. They gave us 3/4 of the purchase price, and we managed to raise the rest with private foundations. The Wyndham Foundation was one of them, gave us a small grant, and a number of other foundations like that, as well as local fundraising. And what seemed like pie in the sky is now actually happening. So we just continue to be sort of amazed at what we've done, and what's happening now is that we've just last week, or maybe it was this Monday. Yeah, we actually have signed purchase and sale with the Mercedes family for what you see as the phase 2 lands of this, what we're calling Deer Run Nature Preserve. And so that's a much bigger chunk to pull off and to succeed, but we've now set that as our next goal. The purchase and sale gives us till July, the end of July, because July is the beginning of the state fiscal year, so the funds that we apply for won't be available until then. So we've already submitted our application to the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board for that, and that will be what we do this next year. So we are coming to both Brookline and Newfane. Essentially, our first goal is to get the word out. We have a public meeting December 4th at the Williamsville Town Hall, or the Williamsville Hall, which we've got press releases going out, and we're trying to get as much publicity for that as possible to just let everyone in the area who's interested know all about this project. But also, for the purposes of our grant application, they would like to see that there's community support for the project, and so a letter of support from Planning Commission, Select Board, Conservation Commission, if there is one, that type of thing is helpful to our grant. So we're here to ask you as a board if you would be willing to write a brief letter of support for the project. So that is why we're here. That's a little bit about the project, and I jump in with questions any time because I can kind of just keep going.
I'd like to say a few things.
Yes.
One is that it turns out that in phase 1, there was a small portion of the parcel, the 300 acre, roughly 300 acre parcel, was in Brookline, and the select board, the Brookline Select Board did give us a letter of support for that, for which we are very grateful. It turns out that more than 400 acres of this 626 acre parcel that was just signed on to buy is in Brookline. So the majority of the Deer Run Nature Preserve, which ultimately will be about 1,000 acres, these phases 1 and 2, will be in Brookline. So we definitely want to answer your questions and do what we can to gain your support. We'd also love to have someone from Brookline on our board. We have mostly people from Dummerston. I'm the only person from Newfane, and we have someone from Guilford. But just something to put out there, if you know somebody who's looking for a way to spend a convivial Tuesday night, one Tuesday a month, and then a lot of other work in between, as we are learning how to manipulate these foundation grants and the conservation board. We're hoping that, logistically anyway, the second time will be easier, although the amount of money we have to raise is larger. We will have this meeting, public information meeting at Williamsville Hall on December 4th at 7 o'clock. And it is 2 days shy of a year since I first learned about the Deer Run Nature Preserve on December 6th in Dummerston last year, when they were proposing phase 1 as, gee, we hope we can do this, and you know,
Phase 2 is just a teaser.
Phase 2 was a dream,
Yeah.
that we raised the money fast enough to close one day after our contract, and that we've already signed our purchase and sale for phase 2 is very exciting. Because we are applying and hope to accept public money, all the laws about public land will be in place, as in it will be open to hunting. And the other thing that I just had an idea of what the other thing was that you needed to know, but it escapes me already.
Well, usually select boards want to know about taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the land is, the Mercedes land was not put into the use value appraisal program. We will do that, or we intend to do that. But as you know, that means that the landowner gets a break on the taxes, but the state makes up the difference to the town, so. But we, so the tax revenue I wouldn't think would change to the town.
Is that actually the case, Guy, though?
I'm not so sure that the land use, the hold harmless payment reflects the total amount of money that the town loses. I'm not so sure that's the equation. I don't know for sure, but it was my understanding that it wasn't, because we have a almost a $3 million land use bill right now, and we only got, I think, $11,000 in land use, hold harmless payment. So that doesn't truly reflect the total valuation of the land that we have in current use.
So I've never gotten a straight answer on this myself. I don't fully understand, but.
Okay, but basically, okay, if an acre of land is worth $1,000,
Yeah.
if it goes into land use, there's a schedule, and most likely the schedule reduces it to maybe $125 to $150 an acre. So we lose that ability to tax that amount of money.
Right.
And when the state send us hold harmless payments, that's a part of the payment that we lose. We don't get the full amount back.
You don't get the full amount back.
No.
Okay, so
Well,
then that,
yeah, so what I would like to point out is that this land conforms with the Brookline Town Plan for resource land. And it is also, there would be no buildable site. This is not land that, according to your town plan, would allow any development on. So it's unusual that the current owner did not put it into current use. And it's sad that he logged it without the advice of a forester. The land will take a generation to recover from being very heavily logged. And so I just add that I feel like you've been really fortunate that Nick Mercedes did not, he just paid his full
Full freight,
share. What I was going to say, I just remembered, is that the state is very interested in conserving this land for several reasons. It's very unusual to have such a large parcel become available at one time, especially in this part of the state, but it is very significant for its 2.5 miles of conserved riverbank frontage. And it's an entire section of the watershed. So, and that also conforms to the Brookline Town Plan for water protection. The wildlife is a wonderful thing, but in terms of your town survey, where the number one issue that people were concerned about was the environment, this will actually answer that in many ways, and it will provide tremendous recreational use for locals. However, you'll all have to drive over to Denver to get onto it, or swim across the river.
The parcel
I can walk.
you can walk.
Right.
Currently, it has no road access, a fact which I think Nick Mercedes might have been obsessing over the whole time he owned it, but it does have a ford across the river, which may or may not be something that works for public access. You know, who knows what might happen in the future, but we are not, I want to put it out there right now that abutting landowners in Brookline, we have no interest in coming after you. Don't feel like we're going to be, you know, trying to buy up any more properties, because this is going to be enough to try to do. And so, you know, we would love it for the town of Brookline to be able to, for its residents to have access to the land, but we're not. You know, we're not on a warpath. We're going to be completely occupied just fundraising for this parcel.
Do we have, and this is maybe something we figure out, and I guess, and maybe I think the Planning Commission may have already thought a little bit about this and looked at some of it. But do we have this overlaid on our tax map to know exactly what parcels abut this?
I do. I have maps that can generate that. The Mercedes parcel is 290 acres, and the Wilson parcel, I believe, is 49 acres.
In Brookline, yeah.
Yes, right, in the Brookline side, and there's
I think the Mercedes
additional.
parcel is more than that, because there's two different Mercedes parcels in Brookline.
The one in regards to this, that parcel ID is, I believe it's 290 acres, 290.9 acres. That's the one right next to Wilson?
There are two in Brookline,
They're
there's
both next to
110 and 111.
Okay, yep, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the other one is. I
It's
know
about
one is
94
290.
acres.
Okay,
Yeah, so
so it's 300 some odd acres, right?
plus the 49.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's up over 400 acres total in Brookline.
Which is again, you know, a large parcel for our small town.
Correct.
It's just, you know, we have 336 parcels of land in Brookline. And if we, you know, lose a few here or lose a few there, this is in perpetuality, as we discussed before. And, you know, I'm not so sure, you know, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You want to have the conservation there, you want that, but when something's in perpetuality, that never can change, or it'll take a long time to have it changed. And anything that's along the water, to me, represents an opportunity for possibly future growth or future something that may be at a fairly good taxed amount of money. And elevation, I mean, basically the Pinnacle Association has pretty much the ridge line across the top of our town. And again, parcels that are high in height at some point may generate a different value. So I don't know. It's, you know, I've been in Vermont for 50 years. I understand what you're doing. The state has conserved hundreds of thousands of acres of land in the state, but we're losing tax dollars, and in a small town, it means a lot.
Yeah.
So
I understand that, and that's for you all to discuss, I think, rather than us, but,
And I just want to clarify one thing though, or ask, I guess. There's nothing about your purchase of this from a tax standpoint that would be any different than if the current owner or a future owner put it into the land use
correct.
Correct.
system
Correct.
themselves, right?
Correct.
So that would, it's not like this purchase is reducing the tax revenue for the town any more than
A private owner.
a private owner putting it into land use would, which to your point, it's
Right.
surprising that it had never been done previously.
Yeah, except that it would be really hard to sell it to anybody else since there's no building lot on it
Right.
and no access.
To your point about future use, and particularly along the river, I mean, there's about 50 acre of hay field that's still being hayed, as well as a sugar bush operation. The sugar houses on the, off River Road, on the other side of the river from the land, but the sap line goes right across the river. And we intend to keep those up, as long as the people doing them are able to do them and make their own, do it profitably and want to continue to do it, we want to support that. It's in our interest to keep the fields open. So the conservation easement that Vermont Land Trust will put on this as part of the project allows for continued agricultural uses. So it does not prevent sugaring, haying, or even other, vegetable growing, any kind of agriculture really. It's really mostly about preventing things like roads and houses or commercial uses. So, yes, and logging is absolutely not prevented.
Joseph, you-
This is a little bit down the road, but seems how there's potentially going to be taxpayer raised funds to purchase this. Did I hear that correctly? You're looking, not Brookline taxpayers, but you're looking for grant money from the state of Vermont?
Correct.
Yes.
To purchase this. I'm just curious, with the current operations that are there, you did answer one of my questions that you're going to continue having it hayed as well as continue a sugaring operation there.
Right.
What, is there anything addressed with how taxpayer funds are being utilized to conserve the land and there's individuals that are profiting off of that?
Well, a couple of things. The Conservation Fund, or the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, is funded strictly by the real estate transfer tax. So that, just so you know that it's not, I know that it may seem like it's all one pot of money up there, but apparently this is set up to be funded in that particular way. And sometimes the legislature doesn't actually give them the amount of that real estate transfer tax that they are by statute supposed to get. Anyway, that is how that funding mechanism works, and something like 85% or some high percentage is dedicated for affordable housing, and the remaining percentage is for projects like this. So that's what I understand about that funding mechanism. The fact that it is, however, public monies, they take very seriously, and one of the main results of that is that they insist on public access to the lands. So there is some, we are actually the easement that the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board wants to see on this land would prevent motorized vehicle use, except for as needed. But other than that, public access would be, any type of hiking or recreation or hunting. The use is where, like you say, where a private enterprise is profiting. That's an interesting question. Certainly Vermont Land Trust, which is sort of partnering with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board on this, their mission is to support agriculture in Vermont, as well as conservation. So I guess technically, some individuals are profiting, although generally speaking in Vermont, paying and triggering how much you're actually profiting, even when you're successful.
But I certainly,
making a living,
yeah,
maybe.
I certainly understand that. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
I actually, off the top of my head, don't know who does that,
Yeah.
but I can assume, without trying to go too far,
Right.
I can assume that they have some sort of transactional arrangement with the Mercedes family now in terms of rent, and I was curious, and it seems as though that will not be the case with the conservation effort.
No, and this is where you're just running into people who haven't read that chapter yet.
Mhm.
But when we become the owners, we will try our best to be landlords and have a tap, the same per tap charge that there is now. The hayfield is it's less clear what will happen with the hayfield because of precedent. So anyway, but we do expect some revenue from both those operations
Okay.
coming to to help us pay our share
And your
of the
taxes
taxes.
back, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
No, that answers my question. I assume there's
Yeah.
more, there's
We
more
just-
information about that somewhere.
Yeah, we are truly just a page ahead of where we are.
Right, oh, right, the
So-
details of how we,
Right, which is why we also want some other board members.
Can I ask, so the use, the intended or expected use of it as far as public land, hiking, I know you guys have talked about potentially trying to connect it to existing trails or forming its, in addition to forming its own new trails. And maybe you've done this already with other parcels of land elsewhere. I'm just curious, how do you deal with the hunting season access in conjunction with the hiking
Yeah.
access?
so this is
How do you do that?
actually a couple of answers there. The Green Mountain Conservancy has no other projects. We're we formed around this land, and so we don't have prior experience. At least this board doesn't have prior experience with owning land as a nonprofit. So this is the first hunting season. I mean, we still don't own the parcel, but we've kind of taken primary responsibility for it because the landowner, we have a good relationship. So that particular issue is suddenly in the forefront of our minds.
How do you
I would
intend to do
like,
it?
don't
I would
right
like
now.
to speak
How
to
are you
it
going to do it?
since my interest in this land came from my interest in hunting. I have been on the land. And on Sunday, there were 15 hikers on the land. I didn't see any deer. So I think there's a
So
little
you
bit,
just shot at the
there,
hikers.
I tried to, but I'm not.
To get practice.
No, not at all. I knew them all. I think there's gonna have to be some more hunter education, or
hiker
actually hiker
education,
education,
yeah.
both, that hunters and hikers all do so at their own risk. And hikers need to know that there are hunters in the woods, and that it is a protected right by the Vermont Constitution.
I think at the very least, a sign at the trailhead, during hunting season that says, beware, this is
beware.
hunting season right now,
Alright.
Do you intend, with the land that you own now, or that you're about to close on, do you intend to clearly delineate the boundaries of where that property ends and adjoining property owners in Dummerston or Brookline
I think we have, I think we're going to be.
for that purpose? Because obviously there are undoubtedly property owners in both of those who don't really want
Right,
hikers and hunters
stumbling through.
wandering onto
Yeah.
their property.
Hikers are harder to control.
I'm being
and-
generous, it's
and
mostly
actually-
hunters that I
And
think I'm
actually,
concerned about.
our land, so because hunting is protected by the Vermont Constitution, it falls to the landowner to post their land properly. I have to tell you, very few landowners do it, and so we can't tell landowners, anything more than if you don't want hunters on your land, post it properly and go to the town hall and register it. And do that every year and update your signs every year. And that's the best you can do. We can't do that. We are not allowed, we will not be allowed to post our land anymore. It is currently
Right.
posted.
Right.
But we probably will have signs that,
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably is in your best
Mark the
interest not to
boundaries.
have people being
yeah.
wounded on your land or near your land, regardless of what the laws may be.
I think
It's a very rare occurrence.
yeah, I think in our experience.
Unless
that-
you're a presidential or vice presidential candidate, I'm pretty sure you don't accidentally shoot people.
Yeah, I think
Hopefully
that the hunters are much more conscious of the
That
Down in Texas,
property
yeah.
boundaries
Yeah,
than the
well.
hunters.
happens very rarely.
Other questions from people? I don't want to wrap this up.
Speaking of the hiking trail,
Sure.
the hiking trail is, we have actually already put a hiking trail in on that Dummerston property, that's the yellow line.
Oh, okay.
And that there is a trailhead on Camp Hardin Road in Dummerston. And so that is the main road access, for now. You know, so trails into the phase 2 lands would come over the mountain from the Dummerston side, because that's the only trail that we've got.
Right.
At the moment. But I'm sorry.
And you won't officially own it until
Oh, not before
July 1st.
the end of
essentially.
July, or yeah, sometime in
Well,
July.
that's your, like, when the funds would come in and you'd start.
If we're
paperwork
successful with all the
and-
fundraising, that would be the
Right.
earliest, and otherwise we'd have to go back and extend the purchase and sale contract that we have. So
Yeah.
it's,
And the conservation board will only give us a portion of the money we need.
Totally.
And then on top of the purchase price, there's the easement and there's the legal fees. So it adds up.
it's kind of, I don't like looking at the bottom line, it's a little too big right now.
Has Mr. Mercedes listed the plot for sale or any portions of it, or have he considered subdividing it at all? Or did you guys sort of approach him or he approached you?
I approached him early on.
I know they're unloading property everywhere.
At
but
this
I
point,
was
they're
just kinda
unloading it
curious.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I approached him early on, shortly after the Maple Valley sale. I realized, and when I saw, I hadn't realized how much property was abutting that Dummerston property. And when I saw that, I thought, well, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to get a large block of conserved land on Putney Mountain, with all that western frontage. So I just called him and he said, well, as it turns out, that's exactly what we would like to do with the land. So we've just been in conversation for the past year, and he initially did list all the land across the river with the Winchester stables. Because he knew that with no road access, he couldn't see how else to make it marketable, rather than, so he bundled it with the stables. But he was we kept in conversation because he thought if we could come up with the money and buy it from him, he'd be able to sell the stables much more easily. Because, you know, he knows that a typical person buying stables is not looking to buy a mountain. So he's been very eager to see us pull this off. And he's been very supportive, the whole family's been very supportive. They actually gave us contribution towards the Dummerston project already, and they have, you know, they're saying whatever we can do to help you. So it's been actually very, very nice working with them.
Great. Excellent.
I should say that they've donated, in both of these cases, the landowner, an appraisal is required by the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, so you know they know that it's a reasonable price that they're funding. And in both cases, the landowner, the seller, agreed with us to give us a 10% discount off the appraised value. So we feel we're getting a very good price, and
Great. Last call? No?
Just real quick, who's haying and who's sugaring right now, do you know?
the man's name is John Cutler, who's doing the haying. He's been worked for the Mercedes family as their kind of land manager for many years. And the I believe it's Craig Stone, is the, I have not called him yet. Craig, I think it's Craig Stone, and I think he might live in Dover.
Craig and Donna.
Yes, he does.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we're still,
I was just curious.
yeah, still reaching out to those people, but we have talked with John Cutler.
Well, thank you both for coming in. I mean, I'll say for myself, I would like to work with the town clerk and identify, because it won't be very many, and I think I mean, I already know some of them, who are the abutting landowners, and I think it would be in our interest to reach out to them and just encourage them to come to your presentation in Williamsville Hall and just make sure that they don't have any concerns as the people who would be most impacted by this before we.
Absolutely.
Well, the studies show that when you live near conserved lands, your property values go up.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really probably more from the standpoint of whether there are any historical concerns or whatever, but, you know, I mean, it's beyond the,
Yeah, yeah.
presumably the obvious ones that people would be in favor of. Since there really probably are not more than a handful of people who own abutting properties to it, so.
Well, please have them come.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Hope
you'll
there's a
come.
good crowd.
There'll be pictures.
Unfortunately, it conflicts with our meeting,
Oh, no.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's right.
but that's okay.
Well, we should have it here.
Well, I will say that I wonder why it's in Newfane when, am I imagining it, or is none of this in Newfane?
We would love to do a meeting here in Brookline.
200, there's over 200 acres in Newfane.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Yeah,
200.
yeah, there are 200 acres in Newfane. And
Oh, that, right, the bottom corner
And
is in.
Newfane has the Williamsville Hall.
Where could we do it here?
Yeah.
In Brookline.
You don't have to.
Susie's little penis.
Yeah.
Right here.
We would.
Yeah, we're hoping to have,
Yeah.
last year we had quite
We're
a
from
number.
Vermont.
The same.
You please, I'll keep
We will
going.
continue to do, any public
You're
meetings.
not getting it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like I said, whether some of the people, I mean, you've already met Charlie Ezekiel on the
Right.
planning commission. I mean, Charlie
Yeah.
is one of the
Yeah.
abutting property
Yeah.
owners on
Yeah.
that. And, we just need to figure out who the other ones are,
Yeah.
just make sure they're aware of it, to make sure
Yeah.
Sure, that'd be
they
great,
have an
thank you.
opportunity
That'd be
to
terrific.
just be
Absolutely.
clear on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
Great.
yeah.
thank you.
So is there anything we can do to, well, if you have our contact info with both of us.
Yep,
And so if you have any questions, or decide to write a letter or to not write a letter, we'd love to know.
okay.
And we can tell you who to write the letter to, and
Okay.
it's supposed to arrive in Montpelier by December 31st.
Okay.
So it would be Karen
If
Freeman.
possible.
Okay. I think-
Karen Freeman at the
Mhm.
We can
Conservation
email.
Board. Yeah, I can email it to
any
you or
kind of
just let me know.
information you need.
what you need.
So,
Great.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
both.
for your time.
Before you leave,
Yeah.
I just want,
Oh, yeah, you wanted to mention
this is
something about
quick,
town meeting.
this is quick.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass, this is really more for the select board than anything else. Deb wrote an article in the paper, in the comments, the 13th, the current one, on town meeting. And it was so excellent, and I knew you were coming tonight. It was so excellent, I read it twice, and we've just been going through this process, trying to figure out can we improve, change our town meeting, at least this time, to Monday night. And I really wanted to give this information to the select board to read later, not for now. I'm just gonna read the last 2 paragraphs, and then you all can absorb it, we can talk it somewhere down the line, because we've got a busy schedule. And what she says in it is a really excellent, like I said, really excellent article. And the last 2 comments are, there will always be barriers to attending town meeting regardless of when it's held. There's no day and time that suits everyone, so at some point, it's up to each voter to decide between the difficulties of finding 3 hours a year to participating in direct democracy or the hardships of living with the decisions others made without hearing your good ideas. And the only one other point I'm gonna make that she made in here was if we had any kind of push in the town, or to explain out to the town, it would be like, we've changed the time, consider the change of time, we'd love to have you come, plan in advance now to come, rather than waiting until last minute to think about it. The only criticism I have about the article, I'd like to see it in February, you know, but when everybody's thinking about coming to town meeting. But as far as this article, I thought it was everything that we were talking about and more, and it was really excellent.
So I'm curious to know what time will your town meeting start?
How we decide.
Monday night.
Yeah.
We voted at town meeting last year.
It took us 2 years.
In the TM sometime.
Probably
We haven't
5:36
set the time yet.
for some food
But
and
it's
then
been
have a
discussed, I think
couple
the
hours,
last
so.
discussion was like around 6. They would, we still haven't
With
determined
maybe
that.
potluck before.
Yeah. Middlesex, where Susan Clark, who wrote the book with Frank Bryan, All Those in Favor. Have you read that book?
Nope,
Great little book. The Moore Free Library has 4 copies of it. All those in favor. She has, their town meeting starts, I think, at 4:30 on Monday afternoon with food, and it's very successful. It's probably one of the best times. But you'll find out.
4:30. How long do they spend eating?
I don't know. But you can call Susan. You can call Susan.
I'd like to just say, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, and I read your article and it was excellent, is when you said that if there's a controversial decision to be made,
Everybody
that
shows
brings people to town
Yeah.
meeting.
Absolutely.
That's true, brings people to polls, brings people to town meeting. And our town meeting is now only 3 hours, and that's only because I try to get Becca and Jeanette and Emily to come and talk.
Uh-huh.
So it's not a whole day, it's 3 hours, it seems to me. Personally, I think 3 hours a year are worth your democratic effort. My boss lets me do that.
But the point
I
you
work for
made, Deb,
myself.
but the point you made, Deb, was if you really care about your opinion, if you really care about the way things done in your community, you can plan 4 months ahead. Look, there's some people that can't come, they've got a planned vacation or some other issue, certainly everybody understands that. But I thought the article was excellent because it brought as many bones of contention that you could think about that maybe we as a select board can try and combat, like daycare, like maybe having somebody or 2 people we're gonna be in a daycare to take care of the kids while they're sitting around for town meeting is one example. And if there's any other ideas or contentious issues, my ambition is to try to, and this is the way I've been for the last 2 years. How many people do we have in town? 520 something?
We have 530 people, 421 registered voters.
Okay, 520 people, so we've had 40 to 60 show up?
Yeah, 60,
How many in
65.
Newfane, Deb?
It's gone down to 86 last year.
So if all of a sudden we were looking for chairs and we had 100 people at town meeting, I'd be ecstatic. So, but we all dream, and keep pushing on, and I just appreciated the article and I thought everybody else.
And again, this year, the town meeting day, the normal Tuesday, is also the day of the presidential primary.
That's true.
So
So
that,
you have to come twice anyhow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, if you do it on a different day, you have to come twice. There is no good time,
no.
no good time, but
I voted against moving it. I was outvoted.
self-government, there's nothing better than self-government.
That's
So-
correct.
There you go.
I was at,
Thank you for your
one last
paper.
thing, I was at a town meeting for town of Brookline years ago when we approved the changing of when we were rebuilding the bridge. And I remember the vote, it was like 52 to 50. And Patty and I were deciding whether we should come or not. And it just so happens that the 2 votes that won the deal were the opinion that we agreed with. So anybody thinks that their vote doesn't count in a small community,
Oh, yeah, no,
doesn't know
that's-
what they're talking about.
Okay, I lost an election by 1 vote, and my husband didn't get to the polls because he was working late.
Oh, that was a hard night.
We're still married.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Deb.
Right. Okay, moving on to what is now 6C, the town report. So, just want to have a quick conversation about town report because I'm starting to put things together for it. for the new board members, so you know, last year, we significantly reduced the content of the town report. We did away with basically everything except for the normal minutes from the previous meeting, the warning, obviously, the auditor's report, which we have to have in there, the financial reports. We eliminated all of the school-related reports. We eliminated the lister's report, the planning commission report, the road commissioner's reports, things like that, which quite frankly, we're pulling teeth to get done every year, and basically were the same thing year after year.
And we had no complaints. I don't think.
To the best of my knowledge, we didn't have any complaints. My assumption, but we should have a quick conversation about it, is that we want to proceed with the same structure again this year, unless people feel differently for some reason.
No.
Like I say, we are obligated to mail out something that contains at a minimum the warning and the auditor's report and the financial reports. But beyond that, we choose to also include vital records and some of the dog ownership stuff and a few things beyond what we're completely required to, but we've greatly scaled it back from the way it used to be. So it's less expensive to produce, it's less expensive to mail, it takes less time to produce, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody generally in agreement that we continue with the same approach?
Sometimes simplicity is beautiful, this is one of those times.
Well, and I don't know that we really ended up doing it. I think we did it with a few things. We get reports from
Different vendors.
some of the organizations that we do appropriation for and things like that. For a long time, we've taken to just photocopying some of those and having them in the room so people have the ability to read them if they want, but not printing them and mailing them to everybody. So the information is all still there for people if they want it. Okay, that was the only thing I really wanted to just make sure we were in agreement with town report before I don't contact the people that I don't have to contact. The other added item was the solid waste management district. So, two things. First, I am officially resigning from the solid waste as our representative on the solid waste management district. I'm doing that quite frankly because I have not been able to make a meeting in a year. So in good conscience, I don't want to continue to pretend that I'm going to those because I can't ever go to them. However, I'm going to make an exception for the December meeting because a subject of conversation for the last couple meetings, reading through the minutes and seeing some other emails, is the board, that solid waste management board has received an offer from Casella Waste Management, who is buying out TAM, one of the other large waste management companies in the southern part of the state. They've received, the district has basically been approached by Casella about buying back the bins that we and a handful of other towns use for our recycling collections. If that were to happen, we would then have to decide, are we now going to rent bins from Triple T, which would add a few $1,000s a year to our cost, or what we would do. I will say that based on the notes and the emails I've seen, I don't think that the Solid Waste Management Board necessarily wants to do that because they're not going to get much money for these things. And I think people understand they're more valuable to the member towns by having them still be part of the circulation than by just selling them off for cash. But I'm going to go to the December meeting to just try to see what's going on with
So it depends on how they vote, right, Dave? I mean, you could.
Ultimately it would be
It's the
voted
member
on by
towns
that.
that are voting on it.
Yeah, it's the member towns that are going to vote on it, but what I'll say is the member towns that actually utilize these are a handful of us who don't have enough votes to do anything about it if all the other towns want the money. I don't think that's necessarily the case though, but anyway.
And you'll
I
know
will-
then, what date was that?
The meeting, that'll be after it's the 12th, so I'll know something more come the second meeting in December. I mean, no action has yet been proposed for them to say, they're just in a phase of discussing it. So I just want to try to be sure to be at that meeting to just be part of the discussion at least before it
Great,
goes further.
okay.
But technically I have resigned. Okay. Moving on to old business, road equipment purchase updates. Have we been inundated with?
Fit me in there too about SLP, because there's nothing in there. We can do that after the other stuff, it's okay with me. I don't have a huge amount. I do have a huge amount, but I'm not gonna say a huge amount tonight.
Joseph, sorry, have any update of note?
We have, actually, we had a meeting just the other night, yesterday, right? And it appears now that we're going to be having another meeting. We gotta double check everything, but probably the 12th of December at 6:30. We checked around to quite a few places, not too many vehicles that fit our requirements out there. I did see one machine that is quite a good deal. We can probably get the price down on it. It's really probably the best small wheeled excavator on the market. It's JCB Hydro Dig is what it's called. And there's one that's a 2017 with 800 hours for $97,000, and we could probably get that price lower. The market is going to be contacting Able. We can probably guess that the offer from last year stands. They listed the machine for higher than they previously had it, but that's just a listing price. So really those are the only two machines that really meet our requirements that are used, meet everything else that are on the relatively local market, but we're still looking and we are aware of the deadline approaching, but it's gonna be slim pickings.
Yeah, there's some of the more popular name brands out there, John Deere, Caterpillar, they don't make medium-sized machines. That's why the specs we're looking for are similar to the rental unit we rented. And so therefore, our search is a little smaller than you would think. But, just some of these big companies, they more or less cater to, big construction. So that's what's, we're gonna continue to look. There's a few more options that we're gonna continue right up until our deadline.
It's possible that Mark's absolutely right about that, and I think that we all would still stand by our decision of the parameters that we set, especially looking at like the machine that Newfane bought. We definitely don't want some huge vehicle for Newfane, but it is possible, and we'll have to discuss this. But maybe we would even include a new machine in just something to look at to kind of show where the market is at, because there's a plethora of new machines out there. Clearly they're much more expensive than I think what we want to go with, but just kind of as a baseline, it's useful to see what's on the market.
Alright. Okay. Great, thank you for that. Moving on to 7B, the building commissioner position.
Oh, I think it's my favorite subject.
So, I think the point of having this on really was to just restart the discussion and just refresh everyone's memory on where we left off. So on April 17th, we discussed it, and you had put together sort of a draft description of the position. I think we had discussion of various maybe concerns about the oversight aspects of it, and would there be some kind, what would sort of the, whatever, for lack of a better word, sort of reporting structure be between advisory committees and the board, and would this be a position in between, as well as just some wording issues or questions. And then, near as I can tell, we basically tabled it and we've never discussed it since.
True, that's true.
So I'll restart it by saying I'm not opposed to the idea of having a position. I think it makes sense because I agree with you that at this point we have enough buildings that have responsibility. You've been nice enough to take that on, but at some point you might not want to take it on anymore. Well, you're going to live forever though. You're going to outlive all of us anyway. So it's not going to be our problem.
Not Joseph though.
Only a good day.
But also just at some point it may become, for whatever reason, you may not be able to do it, and by forming a position that has a little more structure around it, at least we have the framework of how to deal with these things,
Exactly.
which we don't now, other than what you have in your head and have told us about. My only real concern is I don't think that position should replace the direct reporting, quote unquote, of any advisory committees like the Historical Society or the Meeting House Committee directly to the select board.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay, all right.
The whole idea of the position is to keep an eye on the buildings, like the example we had last time about the water in the building.
Right.
Or issues that arise, or issues that building commissioner sees that's not being met. This isn't about...
And being a point person too, so people understand if they have questions, potentially that's the first person to go to.
Yeah, that's where it isn't really the position right now of any advisory committee. They kind of go from their own little thing. And that particular position, it's that person's responsibility just to keep an eye on the buildings. That's the whole idea. As to how much that building commissioner works or doesn't work, that really depends on the person. But to have the position available so that we don't... I'm not going to go into the spiel what's in the plan for next time, but you'll see it. We had 21 select boards. As far as I know, we had 21 select boards from 1989 to 2010 did nothing to that building, as far as I know. And when Tina came in, I met her for the first time. I'm talking about Sunny Lane or the school.
Right. Sounded, I don't know.
Yes, they did. The town didn't own it.
Well, the school, I mean.
It was a school district, but the school district is a town.
Well,
Yeah,
yes and no.
Whose building was it?
Well,
It was transferred, I believe I understand it, if I'm wrong, correct me, that it was transferred to WCSU in 2010, and then they found a renter, and it happened to be Tina, in 2012.
oh, right, yeah, right, I'm forgetting, I didn't live here before the school system.
So the way I understand it, and going way, we don't want to get too long-winded about
Yeah.
this, because Sarah's, we got budget stuff to do, but basically, it wasn't taken care of, no matter where you want to cut it, not pointing fingers. So the idea going from 2014 on, with the select boards and the chairs of the select board, on up to the present day, we take care of the building. And that's kind of leading into, very quickly into, but it's not anything to do with the building commissioner position.
Well, let's finish up on the building
That's what
commissioner
I'm
for a
saying.
second though. So here's what I'd like to propose. I would like to take a stab at redrafting this description. And I would like to then put that, what I'll say is I want to put it on the December 18th meeting agenda, because what I think we should would be in our best interest would be to try to keep the December 4th meeting as much as possible for just budget. So the December 18th meeting, I'll have in advance of that a redraft of this and we can discuss it.
I just
in more
want to make a
detail.
really
Yes.
quick statement about
Please.
a
Sorry,
building
not to cut you off.
commissioner position, is I think it is a really good idea, because we don't just have the school, we have the round schoolhouse, we have the church, we have this building.
And we're gonna sell,
We'll have the new shed.
Right, you know, so somebody needs to be able to go by and look and see, oh, well, a tree hit the limb and it's leaking.
Right.
You know, or for instance, like the bugs that were in the schoolhouse, if they didn't happen to go in there and see something was wrong,
Right.
you know, so I think it's a very important thing to do.
Any other, sorry, not to preempt anybody else
Everybody
weighing in on it, but any other thoughts at the moment, Shelby or Joseph?
I think my only thought about this is, because it kind of just, it raises a different, I think it's a great idea. I think that, I know we don't always have the best participation from the town, and hopefully town meeting day will change that. But I think I have larger concerns in general about the number of people wearing the number of hats they wear. The
Number of hats?
yeah, and how many hats you're wearing. I mean, I just think that we've seen that sometimes that can get problematic. Like there's just too much on people's plates, and or it puts you in positions where you're literally in conflict with yourself, or, you know, just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have the same person filling multiple roles. It doesn't give us a lot of diversity in what's going on here, and I know that people don't show up to town meeting day, believe me, I've been there the last, I've been here since I've gone to town meeting day every day I've lived in this town. Like I get the turnout, I do. But I definitely think I have just larger concerns in general, us not having kind of limits on how many different hats people can be wearing. and
But
how
it's
many
like you
different
said
roles.
before, you can't make people do things, so sometimes you're stuck with people doing what they can do.
Yeah, and you can always have an exception to a rule, but trying to create a rule that'll engender people to show up because they know that they're not just gonna place the same people in the filler slots. They're actually waiting for you to come, waiting for you to be there and take responsibility for a role in your town. And like I said, exceptions to the rule. Some things can't be vacancies, totally get that. But this just brings up to me, like obviously you would be a natural fit for this kind of thing. That's what you're doing right now. You're already doing it without a title. I just think that at a certain point, there's just so much overlap that it would make more sense, I think, long-term, if really not like right now, that nobody can do multiple roles, but down the line, that people are doing their role and they're dedicating their time and attention, choosing to be in the position they're being in, and letting somebody else choose to focus on the other position, as opposed to having to switch your hats and people are bouncing around and doing all the different things. And obviously not like advisory committees where it's more like, you know, I think kind of the larger roles that really need people to kind of be there and be present and be dedicated to that task. But that's just, like I said, this would bring up that in my head, not as like a yes or no on this, but as a larger conversation maybe down the road about how things are going. People being in multiple positions.
How do you
That's a problem
propose?
here, Tax Quinn and Guy.
Yeah, how do you propose to get people to volunteer? You know, we've had this conversation so many times.
Yeah.
I wear a lot of hats as well as so many other people. And the reason we wear those hats is because there's no one else to step up. And for the town to be successful, we have to have some discipline, some way to run it. And that's what we do. Unfortunately, we at the town meeting, you saw, we almost had to lasso people to step up to, you know, be on a select board,
I know,
be on
I
this
felt the road.
committee, yes,
Yeah,
to be
okay.
school directors. So it's unfortunate, but that's unfortunately the way things are going right now.
Yeah, and I've grown up my entire life in a town literally this size, so I totally get it. I'm just saying that we could try and aspire for something a little bit different and try and create a goal for ourselves to get enough people involved.
But
Call me
This is the
optimistic, but.
No,
your concerns are definitely great.
yeah,
But this is the first select board in 5 that we have 2 people under 30 years old, which I think is excellent.
Start a
And
trend.
now, hold on. This is a good trend.
Yes.
Because we need to encourage not just everybody, I got slammed at town meeting for saying gray hairs, but we'll all, white hairs too, running the town. It's not our town, it's everybody's town, and it's your future. And I think the point I'm trying to make is, the more we try to encourage other people to be involved, especially if they're younger, they're gonna encourage more younger people to be involved too. And there's gonna come a time, and there might be a time right now, that if you create a position, there's somebody might come along that's well better qualified than me. I'm for it. That's cool.
Well, and again, I didn't mean it in
No,
relation to
I know
that
that.
position,
Yeah,
it
right.
just,
No, I know
it
that.
just,
I know
let me
that.
just larger,
And maybe that didn't
long-term
pertain to
goal.
what you were
Yeah.
saying, I apologize. But I wasn't criticizing you, you're right. But the problem still is, going back to what we were talking about at town meeting, we gotta try and do the best we possibly can to encourage everybody to participate in their democracy. 3 hours here, I do that one night, watching Rachel Lawrence and.
I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, that's not a huge
I have
position, let's
taste.
be honest.
But
I
the
I'd
point
just like
is,
to interject real quick.
Go ahead, and then we're moving on.
Yeah.
For one, on the specific issue, I agree with you. Clearly, this is something that immediately it seems as though it's tailored for you in this position. But I think that the responsibilities that this position would need to entail, they exist regardless if we have a label for them or not. And I think that making this position will give the opportunity to allow someone to step up rather than just rather than just Bruce handling it. And
Or Bruce going, no, this is what I wanna do, and then we have to lasso somebody else for the chair. I mean, you know what I mean, it's not, but this having people, yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
I think also along the lines of, who are we gonna get to do it, and the problems that you've had for longer than I've been alive of getting people to step up into the town. Well, I certainly don't think that I'm special being on this board, and I think that means that there's many other people my age that are getting to the point where they will be looking to step in, whether that's in Brookline or our surrounding towns. I know a lot of people that are looking for that opportunity, and maybe better turnout at the town meeting, just more education, more awareness is certainly in the near future is going to result in a lot more involvement from people in the town. So I think that we rightfully should be optimistic about the near future of this.
And you definitely catch way more flies with optimism than apathy. So I get the frustration, I do. However, our mindset and what we're even saying on record and our attitude about whether or not people show up and why we think their motivations are for not showing up, that approach doesn't feel inclusive. If I'm somebody who's trying to make that effort to come for the first time and I know that that's the attitude, like, oh, well, it's only 3 hours, like, why have we never made time for this? That's just, I'm just saying, like,
Okay.
all of it's that,
Okay.
let's take the optimistic approach, not the
Okay.
apathetic,
good sales.
our hands are clean of this, kind of, it's their responsibility approach.
Okay, I just want to make one last point, and I guess we'll leave it at that and you go on.
Yeah.
It's real important that we recognize, at least specifically with that building, that there was a $300,000 grant given to the town in the late 80s in order to build that building, and it wasn't taken care of. It's really, we do an incredible job taking care of the ones and all the other things we do here in town. And I think that ignorance is not bliss. And I think you all see that, and the previous select board has seen that. And I think what my point is, that we need to pay attention and take care of our buildings. I was gonna say vehicles, because I was gonna pertain it to, analogous to a used car. Because it is, it's a good analogy. Because if you let it go, you're gonna spend $50,000 on it, which is what we did up to last year. And, it's our responsibility to take care of those buildings as a select board, so whichever way we choose to do it is we choose to do
All right, Bruce, you can have
it. I don't need much.
up to 5 minutes.
I'm good.
You good?
I'm just gonna give you a real, an up-to-date on what we've been doing at Sunny Lane, which is, excuse me, Susie's Little Peanuts.
Right.
And as of Saturday, David will be done. The building will be done of all the outside work that we have had to do. And I'm not gonna go into the list of things. I'll just point to three things. One, we cleaned up I don't know if anybody saw some of the emails I sent to select board and interested parties. I don't think everybody saw that, but to be quick, we had about 9 or 10 people that showed up to clean up the mess for the Big Bear. It was last Saturday? It was last Saturday, yes.
2 Saturdays?
2 Saturdays. Time goes too quick for me. The second thing is, and I'll go into this next time, I'm not gonna go long-winded about that now, our relationship with Dave Zalesko and the amazing, phenomenal job he's done. Getting up on pump jacks to fix the crown molding last weekend in the cold on his own. Just amazing. And we are done as of Saturday, and that's including fixing the damage to the stairs. Is there anything else? I think that's all I wanted to get into at this point. So, that's a good thing. As far as where we go with the windows, we're gonna see that about down the road, and I really wanted to get a little bit more into our responsibilities with the building, which I already touched on it a few minutes ago, but basically, that's it for now.
Cool, thanks.
One last, sorry. Almost.
I hope you didn't start a new paragraph.
The damage to the roof. We decided not to fix it, from what we see, and the reason is quick. There's very solid flashing, we found the pieces of it outside, and it's very rigid steel flashing. And Dave explained it to me, first, that what had happened is the limit hit the roof, kind of crushed down the shingles a little bit and bent the edge of the flashing. So we haven't looked at it with a pair of binoculars, and we first thought if we took some 2x and jacked it up underneath, we could bend that. And he said, probably not a good idea, because it could bend up the entire flashing. We decided not to go that way. Then we thought of going up and looking at it. And then after discussing it and looking at the nature of it, we decided to leave it alone, because we didn't feel that the damage was excessive enough, that it hurt the shingles and the roof enough in order to warrant us going that approach. Maybe down the road, if people are up there painting it, we should take a closer look, but right now, it doesn't look like it's damages. We dodged the bullet, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Excellent.
That's it.
Okay, moving on to 7C, budget discussion. Let's, behind, aren't we? Well, let's give ourselves, start with 20 minutes and see how far we can get, and then sort of assess where we're at. So everybody has their worksheets from last time.
I'll keep it, this is.
Yeah, I got it.
I didn't have homework for the back, I don't know, but.
Just, all we do is just say, we're not finalizing anything, so it doesn't have to be in very detail.
Oh, I know that. Oh, cool. That's good.
Okay, so what I would propose, what we really want to try to avoid, because this has been sometimes our struggle in the past, is as much as possible, let's try not to go back over ground we've already covered.
I like that.
Though it's sometimes difficult to not do that. Heading down the list of revenues, I'm just sort of focusing on a couple of things that I think we had questions about as to whether we should still project the same. We were going to look at the clerk fees, since that has changed.
If we could, David, if you would
Yes,
just
sir.
allow me this.
Yeah, sure.
I revisit penalties, I revisit
Oh, okay.
interest on taxes and so forth, and just to change those numbers, the interest on taxes, I think $1,100 would be a fair figure. I don't know if you had that plugged in.
Yep.
And
that
the
was
one
what I-
for current use, I think 13,000 is good, because this
13,000
year.
even?
13,000, right. We did get a hold harmless payment of 11,000, 12,000, but I know it's gonna increase next year. You know, we're trying to look at 2021, so it's hard to look at your crystal ball. But I suspect with the proposed purchasing and so forth, current use is gonna be higher, so we should get a bigger, higher, hold harmless payment.
Okay.
And then the one with the clerk fees, I'd like to see it $38.50, because I did the calculations of the amount of documents that we file, and we also went into a new rate structure.
Right.
So I factored all that in, and $38.50 seems to be good. We right now do approximately 350 to 400 pages a year, and again, that's so, you know, it's nothing's in flux, it's not the same every year. But I think $38.50 would give us plenty of room that if we either have a little more or a little less, we'll be okay. And that includes,
Conservative is what you're saying.
yes, and that doesn't include the amount of the, that's 73.33% of the money that we take in. Because the other, we used to give $2 toward restoration, we now give $4. It used to be $10 a page, it's now 15. So those two, the $600 for the dog license is good, and on the birth and death certificates, $100 seems to be right, and $1,400 for
Well,
records
but do we
restoration.
want to budget anything for that? We haven't historically,
Well,
I mean,
we
I know
should-
it's ended up working out to be 100.
Yep, because normally now we do everything online, and people come in, the funeral parlors will ask for 3 or 4 copies of death certificates, and so will the people who need birth certificates now, because the Department of Motor Vehicle requires a birth certificate when you go for a renewal, and it's gotta be certified. So I'm thinking that we will have at least 10 of those for a year, that's $100.
Okay, so we'll budget $100, okay.
And $1,400 for records restoration.
Is copies the same at
Oh,
900?
okay.
Pardon me?
Copies the same at 900?
Yes, yes.
The crossed out.
And sorry, what did you say then
I'm sorry, for records
percentage for
restoration.
restoration ends up being, hey Bruce?
Yep, and that should be 1,400.
Excuse me.
1,400?
Yep. And the other one is,
What are you saying?
Records restoration,
You're gonna go with how much?
1,400.
Instead of 825? Okay. That's big.
and that
Because the
FD,
percentage has changed now because of the way the fees have gone. Sorry, guy.
there was a figure down there, FD loan payment. That was an amount of payment that someone had a lien on their property last year. They went to sell it and the lien surfaced, and they had to pay it. It was a loan from the home improvement thing. So that's how we got that $1,100. So that went into the, that's not gonna happen every time. There might be 1 or 2 people still out there who have liens on their property, because when you borrow that money, the town put a lien on your property back in the day, and when you go to sell that, that lien surfaces. So, but anyway, so that's why you won't have anything this
You
year.
don't count on it.
Yeah,
Okay, so we did that.
that's the only changes that I had that I.
State payment homestead, that's a question mark.
Yeah, that state payment homestead ERR, I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is,
What is it? State payment?
ER, is that an error?
I don't know.
No, then 350, unless they're talking about,
Is it the, if they?
We get a
if they
dollar
file,
per
you get
parcel?
the 8%? Is it if they file after the April 15th deadline, we get the 8%? Is it
it could
that?
be. I don't know.
'Cause that
Because
would
the
be
town
a-
waived the payment the last 2 years. This year, we didn't have anybody that we had to waive until it was after the fact. It was after October 15th. So the town has an option to, if people make a late homestead declaration payment, if the town is the residential rate is lower than the non-residential rate, we can get 8%, and if it's more, we get 3% penalty. The town can waive that if they wish, but the money comes back to the town as a penalty.
It's something that's worth looking in, not that I think we should budget anything for it,
No,
because it
no.
doesn't sound, but just as a reference point, it does look, based on the reports, that we've actually gotten over $7,000 for that in this current fiscal year. Again,
For
it's a
the state
unexpected.
payment homestead
For
ER,
the state,
We had a
yeah.
lot of late.
where it says
filing.
315?
Yeah.
Well, that's from 2019. I'm saying, looking at the ledger report of the actual, of the current fiscal year's actuals, there's $7,400 in that account, actually, this fiscal year. Again, I'm not,
Because
Not
we
to-
didn't have it the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'd have to see that. I don't know what that is, to be honest with you, David. I think we need to get a clarification on it.
again, I think it's something we've never budgeted for, so I'm not saying we should change that now. It just, sometimes.
And where did that figure show up, David?
On this is the current year budget status report.
Okay,
As
and
of
that's,
October 16th anyway.
all right, and what, page 1 of 4?
Page 1, yeah.
And that shows,
State payment homestead ERR.
state payment error. Oh, okay, 19,092. Wow.
Anyway, let's move
Yep.
on from that, so we don't get too bogged down by it. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for figuring out the numbers on the clerk fees and that, and vetting all of the rest of those. That's great. Okay, I would suggest we move ourselves on to page 2 and start going through expenditures for Fund 1. First up is the select board expenditure, which has been flat for the last several years, but when did the select board stipend change?
2016.
4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, we can see
Says
it's
it right
there.
on here.
Yeah, FY 16-17 is when
Yep.
the increase.
Over here.
On that little handout.
Oh, okay. Approved rate, yeah, okay.
And it was a,
Wait, where are you saying that?
you, on this
You can
employee
see where
pay
the
rate
increase
summary,
was on.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm not looking at that. Oh, okay, it notes it there. Oh, okay, cool.
and it was a substantial increase.
Yes, it was. That was there.
Yeah, holy moly.
I guess because I know that I think there was some question about this, or that I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, Joseph, to say that you wanted to do a little bit of research on why the board got to that number, or how it compared to other towns or whatever. Seeing as we have
That was,
several members of the board who were part of that, does anyone want to speak briefly to why it was increased and what the rationale was?
Guy, didn't
If
you
you
do it based
remember.
on, didn't we do it based on?
We basically did a summary, we did we took the summary that the VLCT sends us, and we were concerned because we were having fewer and fewer people volunteering for select board positions. And when we looked at the survey, we realized that a lot of places were giving a stipend, and we thought that maybe that would be a good thing to do. The bottom line is that most people are working 26, they come to 26 meetings, and we figured at $50 a meeting, it would be worthwhile, and it gives a person a reason to be at the meeting because he's getting paid to be at the meeting. So the bottom line is that everybody in the state, we were in the middle range of what everybody else in the state was getting, and we thought it was fair. Considering that we have no medical, no vacation, no anything, there was something to draw to make a candidate want to be here, to do something. And that's why we raised it, and I don't know if it's changed anything, to be honest with you, but we have a full select board, we have 2 young people. I don't think, like Joseph stated, it wasn't all about the money, but the bottom line is that if you don't wish the money, you can donate it, whatever it is, but to me, it's a thing that we should continue on so that we can attract a viable candidate. That was the thinking at the time.
yeah, I wasn't always in favor of that at all, what you're saying. But then I came to thinking more in line of what you were saying. Just in terms of down the road, 5 or 10 years from now, we have a town clerk, some towns have town managers, they're paying them salaries. And we're gonna have to be competitive in that respect if we wanna have good personnel and people that are qualified to do the work. And that was my thinking, so I kind of changed my mind. I wasn't in favor of it at all at the time, but I kind of warmed up.
Was there, I mean, I wasn't on the board at the time, was there feedback from townspeople either during the budget process or at the vote?
No, the whole board was on
I don't
board
know if
with
I
it.
was at the vote town
Just the
meeting
board.
for it.
The whole board was on board and it passed with the budget, was part of the budget.
Who
approved
Done.
George,
I recall that when we were talking about this, there was a real stagnant in a lot of the salaries at that time that hadn't been changed for years and years and years. And so we took a look at a bigger picture about, compensation. And it wasn't just the select board,
Right.
it was other positions that we also looked at that hadn't been given raises in 10 years or so. So we looked at that.
And you did it by looking at the compensation and benefits, the VLC, and
Right, yes.
gauge it based
Yep,
on.
which you've seen.
Yeah, which it just came out again, and I think some of us have looked at it.
And we took the middle of the road attitude, not the high end, not the low end.
Yeah.
Right.
We have two former union shop stewards sitting here at the table today. And I just want to say that it's really important that we're sensitive to the needs of the people that are, other than just the select board, but the other people that, like Doc was kind of alluding to, is that we have to keep aware of the cost of living, even in our little town, and the cost of, and the revenue that they're getting, and the salaries that they're getting over a period of time. We can't just stick on $10 an hour for the next 20 years. So this is really important that we review it every year, even if it's line item by line item. It might take a little work, but people, in this respect, other than the select board too, deserve to be paid. It's just that simple. It's a lot of work, and a lot more work than it was in,
Well, the
in
responsibilities,
1978.
the responsibilities and the amount of work that we're
Yes.
asked to do now has more than tripled in just the
Yes.
last 5 years.
This isn't a small town anymore in terms of work.
Sure.
Dave.
Joseph, you want to say something?
First off, just clarification, when it was changed, who actually changed it? Who approved it? Who put it up for vote?
The select,
Select board.
So if I'm not mistaken, regardless of what it is now, just if it were to be changed again, if I'm not mistaken, it's not legal for the select board to approve their own pay raise. I think
No, it's not.
it's not even legal
Well,
from
all
what I
of this is
understood.
voted on by the town voters at
Yeah.
the town meeting. That's the approval of the
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
I guess,
The select board suggests a budget to the town voters, and the town voters approve.
I get where Joseph's going.
from what I had understood, and again, I very well could be mistaken about this, is that it is improper for the select board to amend their own pay. I'd read something, maybe this is very old, but I read something that the select board's pay needs to be amended by the listers or something. Because I mean, clearly there's a conflict of interest if we all sit around and we say, hey, we think we should all make $3,000, and then no one shows up to the town meeting except our family, and they all say, hey, here we go.
But that's
I'm not saying that that's gonna happen, I'm just saying
The
that we
theoretical
can
facts.
see the conflict of interest, because a large portion of this discussion is based around, it's not necessarily objective, it's subjective. Why did we increase the pay? Because we think that would have a larger pull on people to volunteer. I subjectively disagree with that opinion. Now, I'm not saying that we should lower it now or anything, I'm just asking everyone to, for clarification on what the legality of adjusting the pay is, because I had understood that was not proper.
I mean, I'll freely say I don't know. I've never been part of a board where we've changed it. It's been this way since I've been here. Guy, would you want to reach out to VLCT?
I will, but I'd just like to
find out
add to the fact that the select board is the body of the town.
Yes.
That watches the financial
Yes.
aspect of the town. And if the body decides that they need to be compensated in a different way, they can vote on it, and if the majority feels that's good, that's fine. It gets put into the budget. And when you go to town meeting, there is that question, shall the town vote for a budget? And the town gets to see every single thing that's in that budget. If there is some sort of resentment or something that they're not happy with at town meeting, that is the time when they will voice their opinion. But the town meaning the select board, and the select board only, is the ones that are responsible for every dollar that this town spends.
Yes.
I certainly understand that, and that's why I kind of brought that up for clarification, because I would assume that everyone understands that there's clearly a conflict of interest of a group being the board, amending their own pay.
I would disagree with that in this process, because again, the process is not, at no point do we as a board have the ability to increase our stipend starting tomorrow.
Yeah,
Correct.
I understand that.
We have the ability to suggest an increase in the stipend to the voters of the town. Like we have like we can suggest spending money in all kinds of different ways to the town, and the town votes on it. So I would argue that there is not in fact a conflict of interest built into that system. It would be if it were different.
Yeah, if we had the ability.
But I think
to prove it.
it's worth clarifying whether there's anything different that VLCT or anyone thinks.
Some towns may have a
process should
charter
be. You never know.
that says, you know, before
It's
you
not a
can
bad
increase
question to ask.
salaries, there's certain things, but basically the town is responsible for its salaries and spending of all monies in the town.
And the people in the town trust the select board to do the thing that's right. What you said about having 5 people show up in the family and voting for it is a bit of an aberration. And
I understand, I'm not trying to make accusations, I'm simply just understanding.
but then you know what happened in this small town? People would be getting a special town meeting in a hurry because people would hit the roof.
Todd, did you-
They went through virtual like a picnic.
Todd, did you want to say
Yeah, I was
something?
gonna say, the only salary increase that we voted to apply was we did give our assistant treasurer a 50-cent an hour raise, and that was the only increase that happened outside of a town meeting vote. And that was, what is?
Well,
What was our?
Yeah, when Louise was here.
Yeah, we did,
Oh, I remember that.
But that money was already budgeted, you took, in other words, you didn't increase the budget.
No.
You did not increase the town budget, but we took it from kind of rob Peter to pay Paul,
Right.
and, you know, that was within the
that
realms
was
of
the only time we
reality.
voted,
And
after that
unless-
vote, to change the salary.
The most important thing is that we didn't arbitrarily pick figures. We looked at a study that was done statewide about what people were being compensated and how they were being compensated, from town clerks to treasurers to select board members to committee members and so forth. And that's how the select board, after some, long discussions, came to conclusion that that's the number that they wanted to use. And that's how that came about.
Okay, I guess I would suggest for the time being that we bypass the select board number. I think it would be good for us to get some clarification on sort of how we got here, or whether there's any
Some towns use the
difference
cost
about
of
the
living,
process.
some use, there's different indexes that they use, but like you say, I'll ask VLCT and see what,
Yeah.
what their comment is, and ask them to email it to me so we have a paper comment.
I'll look up where I read that, because I certainly did read that, and I think it was actually the handbook that,
Oh, the select board
the
handbook?
select board handbook.
Yeah, maybe go
So
back
I'll-
and see what
yeah,
that,
I'll look that back up and I'll,
Yeah.
dig through those, like you said, even in that
But we
book
really
that was
didn't,
published.
but we really didn't vote it. It was approved by town meeting.
No, I certainly understand that. I certainly understand that, and I'm not making any accusation. I'm just
No, you're
kind of
not.
discussing.
right, you saw something that makes you wonder what that, yeah. So
I love
right,
receiving
okay.
questions.
and I
That's
will-
gonna tickle my brain all week. I appreciate that.
I will actually say that I've heard from several individuals in the town that have commented on the pay increase.
Who were those individuals?
4 years ago?
Yes, they commented,
Was
commented
it?
that it jumped a large amount,
Well,
in-
Were they aware that for 12 years there was nothing?
Now, see, wait a minute.
no, they were aware of that, and I'm not saying that no one's.
Wait, just a moment.
But Bruce,
If they're gonna, oh, I'm sorry, you're not done.
Let Joseph finish.
No one is bringing torches to the town hall. They were simply stating, that the select board makes a lot more money than they used to, and then yes, someone like, oh, I didn't think the select board made any money, you know, it's not like there was any massive accusations, it was just, you know, when I stood up at town meeting and volunteered for this, I was not aware that
You had to pay.
any money
Yeah,
was
me too.
coming to me.
Nor was
Me
I,
too.
So,
when I did it.
you know, but again, I'm not even saying that we should necessarily change this right
But
now.
to react-
This is just something that that came up in my mind, and you know,
Mhm.
I don't feel as though personally that, you know, again, when I volunteered, I wasn't saying, hey, I need money,
I need
you know,
money, right.
easy way to get money, but
But I would say to
There's
the
a lot
people,
easier ways.
I would say to the people that that say these type of things,
I wonder what
3
the
hours
others,
a year.
what the other towns that they pay their so much persons.
Yeah, we took it from the survey that we got from the
Your town
VLCT.
meeting,
Okay.
if you got it right, that's what it's for.
Yeah, there's a lot of places in the area that looks a little bit lower, but
Yeah.
those numbers are just for this year, I don't know what they looked like back then, but that email that got sent out, we were a little bit on the higher, but not the highest.
But if people
Compared
have-
to comparable,
The area, like literally
Towns
our
with
neighbors,
comparable-
yeah, like with the smaller
We're
ones,
beating
yeah.
dead one.
Yeah. Oh, no, but yeah, no, so I was just saying, yeah, but for now, I think it's probably like you said, good, skip select board for tonight and just go on to the other ones.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, road commissioner. Currently, we do not have one, although that is a subject that I want to bring up on the 18th of, do we want to try to solicit interest in someone being road commissioner? For the last couple of years, though this is relatively new, there did not used to be a stipend for road commissioner, but we introduced this 2 years ago,
The road commissioner.
I think, and it promptly made Archie resign.
No, that's
I'm
not-
kidding.
you're not
No,
sure.
no, I'm
That's a
sorry.
joke.
It's a joke, that's obviously a joke.
Yeah, I think, but his reaction was like, I remember, he's sitting right there. I remember his reaction was like, why are you doing that? We don't need to do that. And you know what he's thinking, he's a businessman. We don't need to spend the money, don't spend the money. That's basically what he's thinking. I could just read it.
Don't need that.
Okay, let's move into the essentially budgeted numbers for the hourly positions. Starting with town clerk, last year we budgeted 21,560, which was the same as the previous year before.
And the year before that.
We've been around that in actual from year to year. I don't see any compelling reason to change that amount.
Well, this guy complains.
It's always within a bit of being accurate because
It's hard.
you know,
It's hard.
the hours for the town clerk are fairly constant from year to year. And all of that stuff with the school board stuff, essentially,
We
we get
charged
reimbursed by
Yes.
the, right. so
Yes,
that-
for the
so
Australian balance,
that
because,
wasn't too bad.
you know, to do 4 last year, and we have to be here for 12 or 14 hours,
Right.
it didn't seem fair that the town pay for the whole load. We do pay part of it because it's part of our tax money, but there's no reason why we should pay the full amount.
Right.
wait, so with those extra hours, do we have that budgeted in reimbursement money somehow?
That's where it's supposed to be.
Well, I don't know that we really have, do we have a separate account for, we don't really split out those hours for school district things versus normal things, and we don't really have a revenue line for reimbursement. I mean, oh, actually, I guess we do.
Yeah, we thought
We do have a revenue line for reimbursements.
Yeah, education district election
I
costs.
mean, that's a number that's probably gonna be
And I put in
significantly higher
414.
this.
Could be good.
One would like to believe by the time we get to the next fiscal year, things will
having
have
school.
Well, we're
settled
gonna-
down and we won't be having school elections every other week.
No, but you will have 2 a year. You will have one for the budget
No.
and then one for the at-large member. Both of those have to be Australian ballot. And each year they've been independent or separate, but at least one for the budget. And when I calculated that at 12 hours, it comes to $414 for 2 people. And that's what we should be reimbursed from the school district. We send them a bill and
Right. That makes sense.
So that still
At least
nets
that.
out. Okay, so we'll leave that at 21,560.
What happened with the road commissioner?
I don't know.
We'll probably leave it the same for now.
Yeah, I think we leave it the same unless someone has a compelling argument, which we'll table any compelling arguments for later. Treasurer, tax collector, we've typically budgeted 5,900. Any reason to think that should change?
It should be a
one
little
way or another?
less. It should be less because I make less than Samara did, so it should go down.
But by the same token, last year you were over by $500 in the $524 over
It
the
was
the
over
budget.
in
Yeah.
So
fiscal
maybe you
19.
left
Do
it
we
at the
know
same
where
level.
it's?
Yeah, then it would balance out with the pay rates.
Do we know where it's, well, I guess that's not gonna help us, because it's gonna be incomplete anyway. I'd suggest we leave it the same then for now. At 5,900. Delinquent tax collector,
We have it at $3,600, and basically, that's also to offset some of the other time that I've been doing other things. But we now, for the last 4 years, this year we're down, we started with almost 24,000, I'm down to $600. The 3 years prior to that, we had 000. So hopefully, again, it takes a lot of work. You have to meet with lawyers, you have to go talk to people, you have to do certified letters and so forth. And I think at that time we budgeted at 2.5 hours a week or 2.5 hours a pay period to come up with that figure. And it seems to work pretty well. The bottom line, if we don't use it, that's money that we can give back. So, but the bottom line is that delinquent taxes, I'm gonna be honest with you, they take a toll on you because you're dealing with your neighbors and
Yeah.
friends.
I wouldn't want to
And
do it.
people there's 250 different stories out there. And
Like a collection agency.
it's okay, but the bottom line is that that's what we're elected to do, and whoever the delinquent tax collectors, a lot of towns have been using the 8% penalty as their compensation. And in our case, when that came up to me, I said I would not do it that way, because to me, that's like bounty hunting.
right,
I just didn't, I felt uncomfortable with that, because people would say, oh, you're chasing me because you're getting that 8%. It's just an uncomfortable thing for me, and if it was that way, I just wouldn't want to do it.
I'm gonna suggest we leave it at 3,600. Listers, we reduced last year, it had been at 4,400, we reduced it to 3.
I think this year,
Do we have a feel of whether they've been any more, whether?
well, I think there's gonna be some things going on, because the listers, we haven't had an appraisal in 10 years.
Right.
And speaking with Cy Bailey, who's the district supervisor for the listers, I wish Marcia was here, but I'm sure she won't mind if I explain this. They're considering a reappraisal. And it takes 2 years for the reappraisal to get into a rotation with the people who do the reappraisal. It's just a thought right now, even though our CLA is 100.3, which is near perfect. But like Cy Bailey said, can you pick out 10 people and go to a house and tell me that what you have them listed for on your grand list is correct?
We
It's
just got
probably
appraised
not.
for 20,000 less than we're paying taxes on.
So,
Yeah, did you?
the bottom line,
Nice.
there is $32,000, I believe $32,000 in the appraisal fund,
Right.
which should be more than adequate or very close to be able to do an appraisal, so there wouldn't be a big, a tax increase because of appraisal. So, that's just something they're thinking about, so I guess this year, there's been a number of changes, a number of things that they have to go visit, so I think they're gonna be putting in a few more hours. And they
Yeah.
kind of drag their feet putting in their hours, they don't give you they do it once a month or once every 2 months, but they meet here every Monday night.
Cause there's building going on, you can see it all over the place.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but there's changes.
Right.
If a guy puts a garage in, or, the guy does something, there's something that changes the appraised value. So,
Dot alone.
yeah, she should,
Yeah, but you took
Chandelier.
down a building and put one up.
I'm gonna propose that we leave it at 3,000, because even with some increased activity over the previous fiscal year, where we were just at over 2,100 overall for the cost, hopefully that's enough of a buffer. I mean, it's hard to project into
Yeah.
the future that much, but I'd suggest we leave it at 3. Unless someone at the moment is compelled to say otherwise.
See a trend another year and then you change it.
Well, I mean, if
If
in
there's a
the
trend
absence
every year.
of great evidence one way or another, yeah. Auditors had been at 1,100 for a while, we lowered it to 800 last year.
was that considering the price of the printing of the, no, okay.
No, but it is somewhat considering the amount of time that they put in, because they used to be the ones who got everybody
Yeah, they did
to
everything.
do their stuff and handed everything over to the printer and whatever, and now I do it.
You do it.
So they don't really, they audit the
Right.
books and write their auditor's report. That's now their only responsibility, so I think leaving it at 800 should be more than fair. Health officer, we haven't historically budgeted any money for health officer.
There's 2 letters in the mail in regards to health officers, their terms expire this
No, yeah,
December,
December 31st. right?
so,
Don't ask me to do it again.
Let's not get into that now. I suggest we leave it unbudgeted. Assistant town clerk, we budgeted 6,500 last year. Looks like the year before, we were pretty much there.
Yeah.
We increased it slightly because we went a little bit over, but,
I think,
and that's separated from the records restoration
Right.
item, which is separately 1,100. Guys, you're feeling
I think 6,500
keep
is,
it the same?
is the same, yeah, it's 4 hours a day, 2 days a week, 8 hours a week.
And then records restoration wise, do we keep that the same, or should
Well, again,
that
Gwen-
change as we're?
Gwen has been doing it, sometimes she does it twice a pay period, sometimes once a pay period, she does 2 hours where she's photographing and making entries into the date book for the volumes that we have in there. So I think, basically, I think that's a good figure that we have in there.
I mean, it was pretty accurate the
Yep.
previous year.
And we could stay within that figure if we have to. So we'll just have to stay in that figure. $1,100, I think, is it. And basically, I think that money should come out of the restoration fund. So there's almost like, okay, but all right, but for some reason,
No?
we're showing it as another expense. It's almost like a accounts receivable. We already have restoration, so that money should actually come out of the restoration money that we have in there.
On the revenue side,
Yes,
out of the records restoration revenue.
right.
Is that legal?
Well, doesn't it?
Yes, it is legal, because she's doing restoration work.
Cause I was told it was only used for the actual restoration, that the actual time, you can't pay out of that, but I could be wrong.
When I spoke to them in VLCT, they said as long as it was related to the copying of the machine, and that's what she's doing. She's making photos and also making some data entries that had never been there.
So she.
But I'll revisit it, you know, but that seems to be a legal way of spending that restoration money.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay, but as far as the budget is concerned for the expense of that, we're gonna keep it 1,100.
Yes.
Listers reappraisal, we've never budgeted anything for that. Like you say, we have separately a fund building up for.
Right, the state gives the listers X amount of dollars
Yeah.
per parcel.
Election officials,
That may be where that money went for the, you know, with some of the reimbursement. There's some redundancy there, it appears, between election officials and also for the, unless that's also for
I
the
think that may be.
federal.
Yeah, and is that not, right, is that not for
Well, we have,
Cynthia,
no,
people who
we have,
on actual?
it's basically two of us, Gwen and I, who are here 14 hours a day, and it's for the federal election and the state elections. The federal being the, you know, once every 4 years, and the other every 2 years for presidential primary and state primary. So, again, the bottom line is hard. I have called people, asked people to be here. Some people come in for a couple of hours. It has to be, we have to have someone here. It's a federal law. And if we can't get anybody, and we're paying $10 or $12 or $15 an hour, that's what we have to do. A lot of places have actually paid election officials, and that's the only reason they go there, unfortunately, but that's the truth.
Maybe you should bring this up at town meeting, discuss it, because I don't see much youth in here, other than people that are way retired, that help you or assist you with the elections. And it's few from, I mean, Marcia is not gonna be around forever, Cynthia now is not gonna be around forever.
But the Board of Civil Authority, which is supposed to be here to help count in the evenings, it hasn't always been here. You know, you have to do these things. It's a federal law. Or Gwen and I will stay here until 1 o'clock in the morning, and you know, that's what we have to do, but we have to do that. We have to plug the data into the state.
Okay, I'd like to, as far as budget is concerned, I'd like to suggest we keep it at the 400 that it's budgeted for.
Okay,
now.
yep.
Assistant treasurer, we budgeted 8,300. The last couple of years, we were a little below that a couple of years ago. Sarah, do you have any compelling feeling to think that on balance, our assistant treasurer hours are markedly different than they
No, I
are
think,
usually, so we leave it at
yeah,
8,300?
I think 8,300 is a fair number.
Sarah?
Because we have a number of people now, you have, oh, I'm sorry, we have myself, Danny, and Marie.
I just wonder why the assistant treasurer is budgeted more than the treasurer. That's just my only
Doesn't
observation.
make sense.
Yeah, I think it's because
Well,
Samara didn't work as much and she had
Right.
Louise do as much as possible. And
Right.
I think it's gonna be the
That's
opposite with
where they-
Danny and I, so.
That was the, I think, pretty sure
Yes,
that was the reason.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is, because I know when I started, Samara's like, you can do whatever you want, and I'm like, oh.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's your budget, you have to do what you want. I signed all the checks, again, that's something that was a rule, not a ruling, but it was expected that we should have
Oh, yeah,
diversity so that we have, there's no chance of fraud or anything else, so that's my role.
Would you want to, not for right now, but prior to our next discussion, maybe we put a little question mark next to this and to the treasurer
I would like to run some
amount,
numbers.
and maybe just run some numbers and see extrapolating what a full year of what you think it might be, maybe we revisit both of those and rejig them to more match.
So that's for the assistant treasurer? You gonna leave that vacant?
Yeah, let's,
And go there,
And the
back up to the
treasurer.
treasurer too.
and we'll look at those again once Sarah's run some
Okay.
projections of things in the
Treasurer,
event that it might be
treasurer.
changing
Do we,
the way they're distributed.
do we expect that the full amount of those two combined is going to remain the same, and it would just be divided differently amongst them?
I would think so.
That's the guess.
I would expect so.
Yeah, right, it's just whether we, right, and there's no reason to set these up to be wrong from the
Right.
beginning if we know we could.
And I
split
just
it
want
differently.
to interject one thing. Some of the reasons that these numbers are plugged in here are that when we have elections in the town meeting, if someone doesn't run or we need someone that runs, it's looking for someone who has the qualifications, some of the qualifications that need to run the town smoothly. And in today's world where digitalization is so important, you need to have someone with the ability to come in here and spend some time and also to be compensated for it, because not too many people want to volunteer anymore. It's just unbelievable. And
Well, it's more effort, I
Yeah.
think, there's more effort than it was
Yeah.
in
Oh,
nineteen.
we went back to election officials?
Yeah.
More
Okay,
rules
okay.
too.
Okay, so we'll look more closely at how those split up later. Select board clerk, we've done 1875 the last couple of years. I'd actually propose that we lower that to 1800.
Yeah, it's an 1875.
he gets $75 a meeting.
Right, and in the past, we've budgeted for 2 meetings a month plus an additional unexpected meeting. But I think in reality, when we do have those unexpected additional meetings, we tend to not have the clerk be here. So I think if we just
What's 150
budget
times 26?
1,800.
Okay.
Well, by 24, because I'm literally 2 meetings a month.
Oh,
Not, in the past, I think we budgeted for an additional one. I don't think we need to do that, so
And
we
that's
should,
just Peter's rate, and like the increase from last year, I'm guessing he increased his rate or something.
we increased the clerk's rate a couple of years ago
Yeah. I figured how much it was.
per meeting.
I can talk about that.
I don't think we need to talk about it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I can
I'll
connect
say.
it of historic,
Yeah.
we'll talk.
So 18.
Sorry, not to shut, but
Yeah,
just
okay.
if we.
It seems high, $25 an hour, if we go 3 hours, I don't know, it just seems like a lot of money.
Not,
Well, look at it this way.
not for doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It's
it's,
not.
How you gonna
It
do
is
that?
not rather make minutes and meeting and typing them all out, no.
Hey,
yeah,
Okay.
you wouldn't
It's-
want it.
Plus
the previous rate was 60, it was $60
Yeah, it's not
a
that
meeting.
That's what I would get.
And we increased it to 75.
Compensation.
Yeah, last
Yeah.
board I was on, we took our own minutes, so it's mind blowing to me that it's almost $2,000 a year in minute taking, that's all. I didn't realize, but that's
And-
fine, so
And if we
I'm
want,
not
if
against
we want to
anything, I
go
was
back
just
to people
curious.
taking their own minutes.
No, I didn't necessarily want it, that's why I was just kinda
Yeah,
curious
right.
where that came from.
Cause
Yeah.
nobody wants it here.
Yeah,
These.
Okay, so I
the-
propose we leave that at 1,800.
Yep.
Sorry.
Maybe a better discussion for offline, but you bringing up that you took your own minutes at the last time.
it wasn't fun,
That's,
but.
I'm sure it wasn't fun, but that's $2,000 that we could save.
$1,800.
$1,800 that we could save the town and,
I don't know if that's.
Well, I just thought,
I know that that's not necessarily a popular.
I guess I'd say
thing to
until
Yeah,
you,
so, yeah,
here's another thing I'll say is that, as someone who has taken the minutes numerous times over the years when Peter has not been here, I do not think that it is a good, you are not a good representative
No.
as
Yeah,
a
you
select
can't
board meeting. You
participate the
can't,
same way.
realistically, you can't
Focus.
participate in the meeting
yeah.
Right,
and be the recording clerk.
too much.
It's
no,
just not
I was
practical.
just surprised.
Which is
by
a
the
reason
rates, so I
why
wanted to ask where that came
Select
from.
boards don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, many select boards have actual administrative assistants who do not only, like
Yeah.
Newfane, who
Right.
does not only which is also something to weigh slightly when you compare compensation between different boards is that logistically, what the board members actually do is different from town to town.
Yeah.
But,
Okay, cool.
yeah, I
Just curious.
think that's a road we would want to tread softly going down.
I think the other thing to that is too, he drives from out of town, like 45 minutes, an
Yes.
hour away, so
Yeah.
he's really gassed.
Yeah, I agree, but when you're an independent contractor, you take a contract knowing how far you're gonna drive,
Right.
But
so.
you're not gonna get anybody on the contract. That's-
No, I know, I mean, I'm
Oh, yeah.
not suggesting we don't have to, I like Peter, I was just curious where that number came
Yeah.
from, because it was much larger than I was expecting, having not seen a budget with one of those on it before, really, that's all.
Animal control officer, we do a $500 stipend for the animal control officer for the last several years.
Yep.
I would encourage us to continue that. I would encourage us to pencil in 500 for that. Payroll taxes,
That's predicated on the salaries that we're paying.
right, which at the moment, if anything, well, we'll see, maybe those are going down slightly from the previous year, but maybe not. I'd suggest for the moment that we keep that at the 4635 that we budgeted last year. It's always seemed to be plus or minus pretty much there. Payroll service fees, do we have any reason to think that those are changing from in the
Not
future?
that I'm aware of, they just changed it, we had Sage payroll, but it just switched over to iSolve, but it
Yeah.
seems to be the same rate so far, so.
Okay. I'd suggest we keep it at 1200 then for now. I'm gonna also suggest that we end at the bottom of this page, which means supplies and postage for town operations.
I would like to see it kept at 4,500 for the simple reason that postage has increased. And there's more things that we have to mail out. And the price of paper, the price of everything is just constantly escalating, so
We'll get to that next week. She's-
I think 4,500 is a fair. I think we took some of the expense out, it used to be $6,000, but we took some of the expenses out for the town report and so forth. That used to be
Right, we
6,000.
broke those out separately, I think, at some point. I guess I'd suggest, given the time, that we end this for now, and we'll pick it up on page 3 at the next meeting. Okay.
And then we're gonna do the,
So, next up on my list had been consider special meeting for remainder of budget planning.
Dave, we're gonna do the appropriations at the end, is that what we're gonna do?
I think we're doing that till next week.
I think we're gonna do that next week, yeah. People have, there is a printout of the latest, which everybody has. Sarah updated that with the latest appropriation requests that we've gotten as of today.
What was the cutoff again? Wasn't it-
Well, in theory, I think the cutoff that we've normally said to people over the last couple of years was the end of October or
It
something
was
like
the
that.
end of November, but it was changed last year until the end of October, so it messed a lot of people up because they were used to the end of November. So I know last year there was a lot of confusion with the people with the requests, I'm not sure about this year.
If I remember right, old letters were all sent out to them, last year to let them know.
Okay, so I guess I'd say as far as the brief discussion of the special meeting, I am hopeful that we can hammer out as much as we need to hammer out at the next meeting when we focus almost entirely on this.
If we can leave ourselves with just the road thing after, that'd be great.
Well, and I think what we need to consider, and this is something for you to contemplate, Mark, if you haven't already, before we get into the road end of things, is whether there are any budgeted things that you think either should be dramatically higher or dramatically lower, or whether, like we did last year, I believe, we went into it essentially assuming we were level funding
Level funding.
all of the road stuff, unless we had a compelling reason to do otherwise. So just something to consider, but we'll talk about it more at the next meeting. So for the moment, I'm still hopeful that we can avoid having to have a special meeting to finish it, but I guess we'll see where we're at the end of the next meeting. Okay, moving on to 8, Mr. Tanza, your town clerk.
It's just been busy, we've done a lot of, there's been a lot of transfers, a lot of title searches, refis and so forth. As I said to you earlier, we're down to $600 for delinquent taxes, and again, I thank the people of the town who realize their responsibility and obligation, and that's good news, so we don't have to borrow any money. And we're just going along. Gwen's been doing the volumes in the vault. That's a slow process, but we're making progress, and it's a whole lot cheaper than if we had to bring in a vendor. So I'm pleased with that. Other than that, everything is pretty good. There is that meeting at Williamsville for the deer preserve. And the other thing is that with the meetings, I'd like to go on the record to ask the people who submit the minutes to please let me know what the next date for the meeting is. Because we've had a couple of conflicts and we're busy. And which is good. We have different committees meeting at different times. And if we can keep everybody on track, because I put them on the calendar and people look at that to see, can they schedule a meeting? That would be really nice. So I've sent a couple of emails out and asking politely to see if that can happen. Other than that, everything's cool.
Cool, thank you. Mark, what's going on with you?
Just have a couple of things. Basically, the weather is turning into winter, the roads are starting to freeze, and I've just been monitoring the roads and doing what I can. After our last meeting, we voted on a road salt company. Thank you, Dave, for calling and setting up the account. I don't know if Sarah was in on that, but we were all set up. I got the call from Dave that the account was ready when the order was ready. So I talked to Archie Clark to see if he thought there was enough salt at our shed to get us through, and he said to go ahead and place an order for salt. So I called and placed an order for our first load of road salt, and as it turned out, salt was delivered the same day. I thought that was pretty good service.
That's not bad.
And hopefully it continues.
That's true, that's all you could get.
You've set a high bar.
So our salt bay is full at this point until further needs. And I got a call from the truck driver saying that he was almost here. And he wanted to know where to leave the slip. And so I'm gonna build a little box to put there for the slips. I have to give Sarah with the tonnage. And so I thought it was good service. I called back. I couldn't get a hold of the truck driver because of cell service. So I called back to American Rock Salt and thanked them for the prompt service delivery, and he said that he knew that being prompt and quick deliveries was a big factor in keeping busy. So I'm thinking we're gonna get good service from them.
That's awesome.
The other thing I have is I talked last meeting about renting the over-the-rail mower, not knowing if we'll have a new machine to use for mowing. So I made reservations for the second week of July, a 1-week rental. The price is up $100 from last year. It's $3,300 for 1 week. than that, they're offering this 40-plus hour arrangement where you can use it as much as you want while it's here. If you go over 40, it's the same price. I asked them if I told them we were in the process of looking for a piece of equipment, and that if it turned out we did not need their tractor for service, how much advance notice they would require, and they told me they would like 2 months notice. So May, which seems reasonable.
Cool.
So we're all set. If we need the tractor, it's reserved for 1 week. And that's the price of $3,300, so.
Great. Thanks for checking with them on that. So yeah, that makes sense. That's
Sure.
good.
And I guess that was it. That's all I have for tonight.
One thing I had for you, and we could talk about this after maybe, is that, I don't know if you saw this, but we got a email from the Better Backroads grant program saying that they've extended the deadline for applications to December 13th.
I did see the notification.
So I thought we should maybe talk about whether we might want to, when the deadline was going to be tomorrow or whatever it was, it didn't really seem like we could likely pull anything together, but now if we have a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
And I know that Mike said that he would, or Jeff Nugent said that he would help
Right.
Potentially with some of that, so maybe that's something we should think about.
Yeah, identify a place.
Identifying something and trying to throw together an application for that. Okay, so I'll talk to you about that after.
Okay.
Figure something out. Sorry, so that was it?
Yes.
Cool, thanks, Mark. Okay, moving on to communications, emails in addition to the Better Backroads thing that I just talked about. We have an email from Dorothy Maggio that actually she sent before the last meeting, but I didn't read it until the next day, about the McLean property situation, health officer situation out on the Athens Road. And I guess, sorry, not to make you do this while you're taking minutes, but did you want to, you've written a letter,
Yes.
however.
However, the landowner was incarcerated the day after I first came to the meeting. And so there has been some use of the property there by a woman and her son, not consistent, it's status quo. There is a health order on file for sanitary review, and right now we're sort of, our hands are tied, there's not much we can, I think we've done everything that we can do at this point in time. So there is on record a health order that has not been lifted until a sanitary review is done, and the letter that was sent was probably sitting in a mailbox for a while now, so.
Any questions from anybody about that? Another email that we got related to the Deer Run Nature Preserve. I'll pass it around, but I'll kind of summarize it. So those guys, so Deb and Sam met with the Planning Commission last week, and the Planning Commission had a variety of questions, like we did, about a lot of the same sort of concerns, I think, or questions. On balance, the Planning Commission, I think, agrees that the concept behind what the Conservancy is planning on doing is in keeping with our town plan and the many stated purposes of our town plan. The Planning Commission is in favor of drafting a letter, which Tom has actually already drafted, from the planning commission, basically, you know, giving support to the concept of what the preserve is doing and the acquisition. The one thing that they noted, that Tom noted, and I do think this is a very good idea, is that I do think we should, and I'm, like I say, I'll work with Guy on doing this, I'd like to reach out to the property owners on any of the abutting properties in town and just make sure they're aware of this and encourage them to go to the presentation or answer whatever questions they may have, just to make sure that no one is caught off guard by it, basically. But assuming that's the case, and I also think we should wait to submit any kind of letter until that public hearing has happened, again, in the event that something bubbles up from that, from some townsperson concerned. But assuming none of that, assuming nobody has a problem with that, personally, I'm in favor of supporting the planning commission's letter in support of the program, but we don't have to, we can talk more about that at the December 18th meeting, essentially, because that's the next time we'd really be in a position to have more clarity.
When did they say the deadline? Oh, well, they want.
They would like stuff submitted to whoever by the 31st, so it all still seems.
There's plenty of time.
Yeah, there seems like plenty of time to just wait for feedback in case there is any.
Yep.
Okay, so those were the emails. Regular mail, we have something from the Vermont Land Trust about
What you just meant.
exactly what we've just been talking about the Green Mountain Conservancy, that they are applying for a grant.
Okay.
And to notify us of the particulars related to that. We have a letter from the Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center. This is an appropriation request for $500. I believe we have received and declined those requests the last couple of years. There's a letter from SEVCA, the Southern Vermont Watershed Alliance. No, it's not their abbreviation, SEVWA, Southern Vermont Watershed, of an appropriation request of $110.
Southern Vermont Water Commission?
Southern Vermont Watershed Alliance. Then we have a letter from the Vermont Department of Health about the, this is what you meant, about the, there's one probably for the health officer and the deputy health officer, noting that both of their terms expire on December 31st. Asking for a recommendation of someone to serve for the next 3 years. So we have a couple of weeks to try to talk both of you into continuing as health officer and deputy health officer. Right? Sure we do. Sure we do.
Did you already answer this? The Southern Vermont Therapeutic Riding Center, we don't already have, correct?
That, it's probably, no, I think that's, it's not been,
Was it
let me
town
look at
officer?
your list. I don't know if that's been added to the list yet.
What's that?
The therapeutic riding.
No, they were declined a couple of times.
Right, but we have a request from it, so
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure whether,
Either one of
no, that's a new one that hasn't made its way to Sarah, yeah, there's a couple more.
Who's this?
Watershed Alliance is one that historically has been in, that we now have, so there's those two. Okay, so that's it for the mail.
Yeah.
All right, pay orders, sorry.
So there's two, because I did the school just now,
Oh, okay,
so that's why that one's on top and it's by itself, because it's just the school payment.
okay. All right, so there's two, note that there's two payroll warrants in there to review and sign. Those are new. And then the payroll, I came in and signed the other day. We'll vote it. And while that is going around, those are going around, really, other than maybe the normal pay orders and quick reports from Guy and Mark, will really, next meeting will be all budget, with nothing else on the agenda, unless something unexpected.
You can leave my report out if you want, that's fine.
We'll let you talk for a minute.
Oh, okay.
45 seconds.
30.
We'll give Mark 20, 25 seconds at the end. That's about good.
I'll get my training from Bruce.
Since it's not gonna be
You're
much,
operating
Twenty more than he needs.
since there's not gonna be
You're
much
operating on
else on the budget, we should
of
give him
time
a
spent,
I
so-
think that it'd be good for him, so.
You know, I can't help it.
That's not even fun.
I don't know what to do about it.
Thank God he didn't
Well,
hear
I
me.
think I figured out.
Yeah, it's very.
I was told, first he was operating on a deficit.
Hopefully
that's why
people
he's not
really
getting
can
it.
hear us.
That's what they call it.
Even now.
And you didn't know when you walked in tonight, so now we're good.
I do know that it's like.
Before you guys were in office.
Well, Bernadine and I,
Uh-oh.
it was the chair of the select board and the vice chair.
Yeah, don't sign it
And
again.
then I became
Somebody.
the chair and I got to be the
And
head.
then I volunteered to help.
Okay.
Yeah.
$233,000 due now. Check.
Yeah, I think I don't think somebody doing houses.
Yeah.
I will copy that.
And I just couldn't do it, I just can't.
So was it really bad losing? I mean, just before that was just basically I was a chairman, right? I mean, if we ever had.
No, I think at one time,
What if we didn't, what
Morrison
happens?
did once, one time he was sick.
Who did?
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that.
They were select.
Who?
He was the select board member.
All right, well, we'll figure that out.
Oh, you already signed this, so I didn't need to, right?
Yeah, that's it.
We like
I need to sign it.
If you don't get a new health officer and you guys don't re-up, they'll assign it to you, because that's what just happened
Yeah.
with Shanika.
That's how I got
Ours
it.
got done, oh, okay.
And that was the select board chair,
Yeah.
yeah, so I got it.
He comes into this badge that I got, I'm like, what's so nice?
I can show you.
Oh, that would be too
Is there
bad.
anyone-
What's involved in
It's okay.
training?
Two select, nothing.
Well, if I had, there's a workshop in Montpelier in December.
We went to one, it was kind of
We
fun,
went to a
though.
couple
It
of
was
them,
fun.
the laws have changed, it's,
You're throwing with that one wrong.
This is paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just have to look at it, because it's already signed.
Try not to
To be
think about that
discussed.
now.
What's the meeting house fundraiser?
Fundraiser, what do they just?
Brookline Meeting House?
Did they, oh, was that was a while ago though, right? So that's just coming through now?
No, they're doing another fundraiser.
We're doing a-
Oh, okay,
It's
I was
just an
thinking
expense for the fundraiser.
in advance. I was
Yeah.
gonna think, I was like, that other one felt like it was.
And that comes
a while
out of
ago.
their.
Yeah, no, they're
funds.
fun. I just was like, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Is something happening or did it just happen?
Yeah.
No,
We're
I think
doing
we just
a-
wait to see more.
Okay.
Hey, the three of us and some other people are doing a mailing.
Oh, cool, cool. No, I was just
In
curious, I was
theory,
like thinking
Monday.
I didn't have something on my.
Sorry, I slipped.
Once What's that?
I said, sorry, select board, I won't be here.
Oh, that's right. Oh, you know, we should. Well, we should talk about just, in the event we need to print anything, though.
I'll give you
we'll
my
figure
login.
out to be able to log on to the machine, just 'cause, yeah.
We don't sign, no, I guess we're
No, we're not.
I'm just Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, sorry,
We
I
forgot to
didn't
put a
state it
little slash.
clearly.
Yeah.
I said it, but nobody did.
No, we didn't, we didn't hear it.
You ignored me like
I
Peter
did.
ignores my voice.
Well, nice, I Bruce scribble and then scribble out, and then Bruce
So, like,
fully signed it, so
scribble
I've got all, but I scribbled and scribbled out.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we accept payroll warrant 2020-20, dated November, the staple is right through it. What is the date on this? 9th, 2019, in the amount of $1,313.15. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Shelby. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving payroll warrants 2020-20, dated November 9th, 2019, in the amount of $1,313.15, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that's approved. Now I'd like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable warrants 2020-41.
It should be 2020-19A,
Oh, okay.
because the other one's 19 and I just.
Okay, sorry, it's down, yes.
Say, okay.
The warrant, the report number for some reason is different, sorry. Let me amend that. I'd like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable warrant 2020-19A, dated November 20th, 2019, in the amount of $233,274.35.
Produce doesn't.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joseph. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving accounts payable warrant 2020-19A, dated November 20th, 2019, in the amount of $233,274.35, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, now I'd like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable warrant 2020-19, dated November 19th, 2019, in the amount of $14,072.04. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Second by Bruce. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving accounts payable warrant 2020-19, dated November 19th, 2019, in the amount of $14,072.04, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those are also approved. Okay, we've set the agenda. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
We didn't set the agenda.
Yep,
Yeah,
just
budget.
We're
It's
not
budget.
gonna open the RFPs?
Oh, for the painting.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, we do have to do that.
What I
Okay,
thought,
yeah,
I smoked right by it.
all right.
Bruce Steve gets his time.
Yeah. All right, so we'll do the window RF bids at the beginning and then we can
All
budget.
budget.
Okay. Thank you for remembering that. I'd forgotten about
Sure
it.
you.
Okay, now does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll let you adjourn before Bruce comes up with anything else.
Wait a minute.
Good idea. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned and we will call it exactly 9 o'clock.